Okay, Stomp, we're breaking into our current episode, so we're on episode 162, but this is a little carve-out that I want you to drop into the beginning of the episode, because I want to plug an event that is coming up. So this is related to the Loon Echo Land Trust. So the Loon Echo Land Trust, this is a land trust that manages a bunch of different properties over in Western Maine. So mostly like in Bridgeton, Denmark, that particular area there. So they're doing a trail race series. And by the time this records, so the first one is on August 3rd, so it'll be coming out like our episode will be coming out like the same time that the race is happening. But there are two other events. There's the Bald Pate 10K, which is on September 7th, and that's hosted at Five Fields Farm and Apple Orchard. And this course summits Bald Pate Mountain 3 times for a total of 1,800 feet of elevation gain and features an overlook of Foster Pond. So this Bald Pate is not the one that's like up north by Grafton Notch. This is the one that's down in Bridgeton that overlooks that Western Maine area. And then the other race is on Pleasant Mountain, which is in Denmark, Maine. That is on October 5th, and that's hosted at the East Ski Lodge. So Pleasant Mountain used to be called Shawnee Peak. It's now called Pleasant Mountain. So the race is going to tee up by the ski area. So this is their premier race. It's about a half marathon distance, and it's got 4,000 feet of elevation gain. And this event will have live music with TJ Swan. It's going to have a food truck with Miles Munchies and a beer garden serving Fluvian Brewing beer. So the event's open to the general public to enjoy, and you don't have to run the race to partake. I'm going to drop the links for this race series and then the specific signups into our show notes for today, and you can check it out, and it's going to be a good time. And then we'll probably have the Loon Echo Land Trust folks on an episode coming up in the near future.
Sounds great. Wish I had legs.
Oh, wow. Who was that? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
Yeah, that's random. Wait, who am I? How am I here? What happened? What's going on?
Yes.
That's great. Are you going to run this or any of them?
I think I'm going to sign up for the Pleasant Mountain one.
Okay, great.
So,
wow.
Yeah, so more to come there, but I'm gonna see if we can get these guys on from the Loon Echo Land Trust. But I just wanted to break in because I was supposed to do it when we recorded, but the timing didn't work out.
All right, cool. Will do.
All right, we're out. On to the show.
Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137.
And here's your forecast for Friday, August 2nd and Saturday, August 3rd. Friday, in the clear under mostly cloudy skies, chance of rain showers and thunderstorms mainly in the afternoon. With a low in the 60s, winds will be northwest shifting southwest at 10 to 25 miles per hour, with gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Higher gusts possible with thunderstorm activity. Friday night, in and out of the clouds under cloudy skies, trending towards in the clouds, with chance of rain showers low in the mid-50s, with winds southwest at 10 to 25 miles per hour. And Saturday in the clouds with rain showers likely and a chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon. Rain will be heavy at times, high in the upper 50s, winds southwest, shifting northwest at 15 to 30 miles per hour.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
So I just hit record. So Stomp and can I just call you Quinny now, or do you just go by Jason? Do you prefer?
Whatever you want to call me.
So
Quinny,
Stomp and Jason are here.
Yeah, no, Quinny's fine. Yeah, and then
Quinny's fine.
Yeah, Quinny's fine. Whatever's easier. Jason, Quinn, Quinny, whatever.
Okay.
I'm easy.
All right. So for the listeners, we've got our friend Jason, Jason/Quinny. We'll get into the Quinny thing in a minute, but Jason's here, so he hosts his own podcast. So we'll introduce him in a second, but just in case you're wondering who is chiming in. But Stomp, welcome to 162. We are moving along here. There's really no interesting thing that we can talk about related to 162, but I did want to give you a heads up that all over social media right now, there's a friendly bear a black bear that's hanging out in the Lincoln Woods Osseo area.
Okay.
And I guess it's
friendly.
It wants to hang out. Yeah, it's not leaving. So I'm assuming they may have to relocate this one. But have you heard anything about it?
I haven't. So where exactly again? In the Osseo
It's going
area?
in between. It's basically going in between the beginning of Osseo and then down into Lincoln Woods. So there's been probably, I think I've read like 3 or 4 reports that it stuck some people on Lincoln Woods. They were trying to get out and it was in the middle of the trail and wouldn't move.
Interesting.
And then it scared a couple of hikers going up the Osseo trail. So it's in that like general area there.
How
and
big?
I'm guessing I saw pictures of it, didn't look huge. I don't know if I feel like you could take it in a fight, but I couldn't take it in a fight. So it's in that zone.
Got it. Okay.
I'm going to bring my Leatherman knife. I got it.
Yes, yeah. Well, Stomp used to be a boxer. I'm a runner, so I could maybe I'll run it, but he could take it in a fight. But it's a heads up if you're out there hiking. I guess by the time this is released, it'll be long gone. But I don't know, Stomp. Have they relocated any bears in your area recently?
Not that I'm aware of, but I really haven't been following too much. Yeah, I haven't heard any news. You know.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, just a heads up in case you're going out there this weekend.
Yeah. We'll take some more in our neighborhood. they love breaking into the cars and the dumpsters and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, good luck. So, all right. So, welcome to episode 162 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week, we are joined by Jason Quinn. Jason is a former U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer, officially rescue swimmer number 500, and he currently works in civilian search and rescues, the host of the Real ReqQ Podcast. So this is a podcast that's a compilation of personal stories from people that have put their lives on the line and made some incredible rescues. The stories told on the Real ReqQ Podcast remind us that those in distress are praying for a miracle, but unfortunately all you get is Jason and his friends.
What do you mean, unfortunately? That's amazing.
No, I'm kidding. I'm giving him a hard time. Fortunately, Jason is there.
There you go. I like that better.
I messed up. I took some of this from the copy on your podcast, and I messed up, so I apologize.
That's great. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so plus we're going to talk about a mass exodus. There's new technology for search and rescue that we want to talk about. Nature is being very aggressive this week. We've got a history segment on Jigger Johnson, the iconic and often drunken woodsman legend of the Northeast. There's a fatality on Half Dome that we'll talk about. We'll cover recent hikes. I got a little bit of blueberry picking advice, and then notable hikes and dad jokes. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
This is Ben Pease from Hiking Buddies. We are a 501c3 nonprofit committed to reducing avoidable tragedies through education, impactful projects, and fostering a community of support. You can find out more at hikingbuddies.org. We wanted to say thank you to those who have supported our mission, and most importantly, say thanks to those who speak up, who ask questions, and who are willing to provide guidance and assistance on the trails when needed. You embody what it means to be a hiking buddy. And now, for all my newer hikers out there, here's this episode's Hiking Buddies Quick Tip.
Hydration and caloric sustenance should begin a few days before the hike. Be sure to hydrate, increase electrolytes, and eat plenty of calories the day before your hike at minimum. Pack a variety of foods that provide salt, sugar, protein, vitamins, and electrolytes.
Hi, Christina with White Mountain Endurance Coaching, and I wanted to let you know that not only do I coach endurance athletes, I also coach hikers and mountaineers. I have plenty of experience in the White Mountains and would love to teach you how to start out, whether you're a beginner, if you're more advanced, give you some more skills to transition from hiking to trail running, and most of all, teach you how to move safely in the mountains. So whatever your goals are, whatever your experience is, reach out, coaching.christinafolsick.com. I'd love to help you.
Let's get started. All right. So, Jason, we typically start the show off with like a series of news articles that are a mix of things that we just personally find interesting, and then also a lot of like sort of outdoor hiking and search and rescue type news. So the first thing we pulled here, I think this is something that Stomp found interesting, but it's also something that I've talked about a few times. So for the listeners, Jason's also in Massachusetts right now. But I'm in Mass for now, yeah. And I've been talking to Stomp about like eventually wanting to move now that my kids are getting into the college days and starting to graduate college and things like that. I'm thinking about moving. Yeah. And obviously, like people in New Hampshire, their biggest fear is, besides black bears, is Massachusetts people moving next door.
Migrants from Mass.
Yeah. So,
and then they bring all their Massachusetts stuff up there. Oh, come on. You know, if it makes you feel better, it's like everybody that leaves California, they're like, keep that California stuff in California. Don't bring it over to our side. All right?
True. Exactly.
This is just much smaller here.
Yes. Yeah. So, but Stomp pulled this and he sent it over to me. So there's a poll that went out. So 1 in 5 people are looking in Massachusetts are now looking to move out. Matter of fact, I talked to my daughter about this the other day, and I think she just likes the mountains. So she's thinking she wants to settle in New Hampshire as well. So the problem is New Hampshire is such a great area that people find out about it, and then you get basically inundated. But I don't know, Stomp, your experience, you've already done the move, so you're a Massachusetts transplant that's now in New Hampshire. So you understand it, but that's probably doesn't bode well for New Hampshire.
We beat the rush because we beat it before COVID. Obviously, COVID was an absolute nightmare when it came to migration of people state to state. It was just chaos, but now we're still sort of struggling up here. The housing is terrible. The rents are through the roof. I mean, it's crazy up here. So, it's a very interesting study. It's a survey. 1,400 people were surveyed, and I don't blame them. I mean, they cite traffic. They cite cost of living. I guess 19% were looking to move within the state as well. Maybe out west to where you are, Quinny, but very interesting. The migration continues.
Yeah, well, I'll be moving up there to boost your property value, so I'll be one of those.
Awesome.
Great.
Yes.
Stomp, you should just say thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
You're welcome. All right, so moving on, we got another article here. This was sent to me, I think, by a friend of the show, Al, or maybe Stomp, I don't know, maybe you shared it with me, but there is so Durango Helicopter Outfitters pilot a new search and rescue technology. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, Quinny, but apparently what this is a, it's basically like it configures a helicopter so that it can be set up as a carrier, and apparently it allows for, it allows for a helicopter to be able to pinpoint a mobile device within about 100 feet. Have you heard about this?
I have not. This is very interesting. The only thing that's close to it that I've heard is something called ReqCO, ReqCO, which helicopters can use. They just hang it from the bottom, and if you have it like in your jacket, in your backpack, it's some of the mountaineers, like avalanche stuff, they use it for that. But they can locate it through that way. But this is cool, man. If you could pick up a signal from a helicopter, it's like a flying cell tower. That's amazing.
Yeah, right. Because it's like, I remember it was like, matter of fact, when we started this podcast like 3-4 years ago, Stomp had sort of called out that the GPS locating technology from 911 had just gotten put into play, or just became like much more common, and you could sort of pinpoint GPS location. So that allows Fish and Game to essentially say like, all right, it's warm out tonight. It's only going to be down into the 60s, and we know where you are. You're in a safe spot. Like, hike out in the morning or whatever, if they don't have a headlamp or something, if they're not injured. But this essentially, like, this is for those 2-3 day searches that you normally go on where you're looking for someone. If they have their cell phone on them, you should be able to pinpoint them pretty well.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, it would have
basically a flying cell tower.
It would have its limitations weather-wise, I would assume, because up here we have the Black Hawk Air National Guard that comes in, but they can't fly in inclement weather or certain wind conditions and whatnot. A number of searches come to mind that they would not have been able to use something like that, but warmer searches, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
it's
so
another
it doesn't
tool.
look like it's. Yeah, it looks like it's costly, but yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. So I'll post this in the show notes, but maybe a game changer.
Heck yeah,
could be.
Technology is moving on here. So the other thing that's moving on is nature. So nature doesn't care about anything. It just does what it's doing. And Stomp has been wild this week, sending me different videos. And the first one you sent me, Stomp, was something in Yellowstone, right? A geyser blew up like a walkway, right?
Correct. Yeah, this was a hydrothermal explosion that actually occurred in Yellowstone. And apparently it's not completely unheard of, but this one was quite a shocker. And I guess the point is that large ones can be expected or anticipated, and they do happen, but the big takeaway is that it was not volcanic. And that was my big question. I'm not too familiar with the area, but I do believe that Yellowstone, or that area in general, does have the potential for a larger volcanic type of activity. So thankfully that was not the case. Yeah.
Yeah, Stomp's one of these guys that thinks the world's going to end, Quinny. So he sent me that, and he's like, "This could be the super volcano taking off." And I'm like, "I don't know, Stomp.
It's going to start in Yellowstone. It's going to make it all the way to New Hampshire. Damn it!"
Yes. All my survivalist training is ready to get activated. So Quinny, so you're a rescue swimmer. You've seen some crazy stuff in the ocean before. Have you had any interactions where you've had to avoid, like you're out in Alaska, so you got to look out for killer whales, orcas, things like that. Have you had any interactions with large mammals when you're in the water?
Thankfully, no, because I don't think I'd be here talking to you if I did.
Right. So,
no, although it's kind of funny, like any training stuff or anything you do like that, you'll look down and you'll make sure that the area is clear. Like we've flown over pods of orcas and whatnot, which is very cool to see from the air, but from the air is a good spot to look at them.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason I ask is there's another video that Stomp sent me that has been going around. So in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, the harbor, you probably saw this too, Quinny. There was it looked like a 24-foot like center console boat. They were out fishing in the mouth of the river, and it looked like maybe a humpback whale or a minke whale. So I don't know what the breed whale is, but it breached, and it breached right on top of the center console and dumped 2 people in the water. So crazy video there.
Yeah, it capsized the boat, and then they had to go in and get somebody to pull the boat out, and wild.
There was some rumor that they were taunting the whales. Is that true, or has anybody heard that, or no? Okay,
I don't know. All I heard is that they were sitting over a pool or a school of fish, and they catch these fish to use as bait for stripers. And one of the expert fishermen that I was reading about basically said to just avoid sitting right on top of these schools of fish, because the whales come up and open their mouths, and it can be trouble.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that it was like a rumor that they were antagonizing, I'll say. I did hear that they drove, like they saw the whales like starting to breach, and they drove over to that area. So it was like you just drove into the wrong spot. But again, that was rumor. It's kind of like, I was not on scene. I don't know, but that is what I heard.
You weren't training out there?
No, I wasn't.
Swimming by at the time.
What are you doing?
Yeah, so that was a wild video, so we'll include that in the show notes, and we'll push that on our social media. And then the last one, Stomp, is a video that I sent you for a black bear. So this was I think it might have been a grizzly. There's a bear that crossed the road. The nice driver lets the bear go past him, and then the bear literally just like starts waving, sits down, starts waving like this. So
really,
I thought it was an interesting video to share with the crew. So we'll get that going as well in the show notes. Yes,
that's right.
All right, Stomp. Now we do have a search and rescue event that happened related to the Jigger Johnson race. So this was, what was this, a 100-mile race?
Yeah, 100, 108, somewhere around there. It went over the last weekend, Friday to Sunday. I DJ'd Sunday morning for a couple hours and got to see all these miserable people running across the finish line. 100 miles. I mean, holy moly, it's amazing that they're even moving. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And I believe they start at, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they start like South Moat, go over South Moat, cover Attitash and Bear Notch, and then come up through Carrigain Notch and then through Hancock.
Yeah, it's all part
Notch,
of it. Osceolas.
And then over, Osceola. So it's a crazy, across it. But they did have one rescue that they needed to assist with. So a runner started at 5 a.m. and around 6:30 he had to activate his Garmin InReach. He had a medical situation. I guess he had calf cramps, if I remember correctly. But 6:30 call came in. Fishing game was not notified until 7:41. So there's a delay between the Garmin InReach and the fishing game notification. So they were able to respond to Rob Brook Trail.
Not unusual, from what I hear with that InReach.
That delay is not unusual?
No, I'm hearing more and more about that, which isn't good in the world of search and rescue anyway.
No. So, yeah, he eventually, I guess he self-rescued and turned up at the command site. So some other racers came upon him and assisted him into a vehicle, and they took him back to Waterville. So he just couldn't walk. So he probably cramped up with his calves and just needed electrolytes and some stretching. So all's good there. But it looks like I saw some video, and I'll include some video in our show notes of some people running. They had some, Aravipa put together some nice video packages of the race. So I'll include those in the show notes, Stomp. And then I wanted to do a quick little history segment on Jigger Johnson. So the name of the race is Jigger Johnson, and Jigger Johnson is a campground in the White Mountains, and it's also a real person. So
right. Well, let's do it.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
All right, so a little bit of background. Jigger Johnson's real name is Albert Lewis Johnson, and he was born in Freiburg, Maine, which is right down the street from my family in Brownfield. And he was born in 1871, and supposedly he came out of his mother's womb with a wad of tobacco, spiked boots, and a peavey in one hand and an axe in the other. So he only had a couple of days of schooling his whole life, and so he went to school 2 days. The first day he forgot his books, and the second day the teacher was out sick, and that's it. But he basically grew up as a lumber camp kid, and he was a cook. And I guess at some point when he was like 12 or 13, I guess the rule is back then when the loggers had their meals, they would all sit together, but the rule was that nobody was allowed to speak. So these new loggers came in. Johnson was the cook, and they were talking Jigger Johnson politely asked them to knock it off. One of the loggers gave him a hard time, and then the next thing you know, they're in the middle of a fight. Johnson apparently bit a piece of the guy's ear off, and at that point, the supervisors were so impressed with him that they hired him to be a logger, and from there, he worked his way up the ranks. He used to run logging drives all over the place, mostly on the Androscoggin and up in Coos County, or Coos County. So over time, he became like a legendary foreman who was known to basically pay people well, but he yelled at a lot of people. He was pretty mean. He was a pretty hardcore drinker, and over time, he just became legendary in the logging community. But after a while, he did retire because the logging drives were kind of coming to an end. So he became a fire warden. So he worked on the he worked on fire towers that were on Mount Chicora, and then the one on Carter Dome. You know, when you go on Carter Dome stomp, and there's the old fire tower supports there.
Got it.
So he worked there, but the problem was by that time he was so into drinking that he would be so drunk all the time that he wasn't reliable, and he would often like go down to Gorham or Berlin to get his bootleg hard liquor, and apparently like he was just way too much trouble, so the Forest Service had to let him go. Eventually he got hired to work on the fire tower that's on Bald Mountain, which is again over by the other side of Freiburg, up in I think that's Bridgeton, Maine, is where he worked. But he eventually didn't last long on that one because he had a homemade alcohol still, and it exploded by the fire tower. So he got fired from that.
That's awesome.
Because of his extensive resume as a responsible person, he got hired to teach survival skills for the Civilian Conservation Corps in Gilead, Maine, which is up in Evans Notch, right off of 113. Again, up in my area, where my family is. And I'm
surprised we haven't talked about this guy earlier.
Yeah, eventually you're going to notice a pattern here with him. Is eventually, due to his heavy alcohol consumption, the Civilian Conservation Corps had to let him go as well. So he finally found his calling as a self-employed trapper. So he was into the fur trapping business for a while, but eventually, I guess he wasn't very good. You had these rules where when you had your traps, you would have to stop and check your traps every 24 hours or so. But unfortunately, Mr. Johnson had a problem because he liked to drink a lot. So sometimes those 24 hours would go by and he would forget to. So at some point, he apparently was in the town of Conway, and he realized that he hadn't checked some of his traps. So he hired a local man to drive him back to Passaconaway, where he had some of his traps, and unfortunately they ended up sliding off the road just as he was about to get out of the car, and it pinned him against a tree, and he died. So basically he died by a tree, which is poetic.
Wow.
So
that's hardcore.
Yeah, quite an American folk hero, and he was made famous by two writers named Stuart Holbrook and Robert Pike. And there was, I guess, a movie in the 1940s that and there was a character that was inspired by him. And in 1969, the U.S. Forest Service opened up a campground in the White Mountains named after Jigger Johnson. So,
interesting.
Quite a character.
So,
pretty cool.
Oh, wait a minute. So I was just looking at what is a jigger, and it's a bar essential. It's related to different sizes of measuring cocktails.
Okay.
Maybe that's the meaning.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. There's some other words here in this. So there's a thing called cock boots, which are boots that are spiked that the loggers would use to, I guess, jump from one log to another. And then there was also a peavey, which is essentially like a hook or a lever that they would use to move the logs. Matter of fact, my father-in-law's pond, Pequawket Pond in Brownfield, we were hanging out on the beach this weekend, and every once in a while you'll look out there and you'll see like something sticking out in the water. And what it is old logs, because we're right on the old railroad tracks that they used to run from Portland to up to Mount Washington.
Yeah.
That the whatever it's called, Portland or whatever railroad, and they would use that as a storage area. The pond that we're on, they would use it as a storage area for the logs. So all these logs are cut clean. They're basically the size of like telephone poles. And every once in a while, one will just pop up from the bottom of the pond. Sometimes they'll stand up vertically, and then other times they'll stand up horizontally. So whenever they come out, we'll pull them out to the lake. We'll pull them out to the beach, and then my father-in-law has like this lever thing. It's like a hitch that we just wrap a chain around these logs, and we'll pull them up, and then that becomes like our bench for the campfire when it dries out. And eventually we'll get bored, we'll cut it and then burn it. But they're super heavy because they're all waterlogged. But back in the day, they would fill these ponds up with these logs and just let them sit there, and eventually they would ship them away.
Interesting.
Wow. So I bet you Jigger Johnson probably worked on my father-in-law's pond at some point.
Hammered.
Drunk as could be.
Wicked hammered.
Drunk enough? Yeah, yes. Wicked hammered. You think he was drunk enough to run 100 miles? Oh, who knows?
I doubt it. So
they didn't do that back
and all
then.
of this is going on, by the way, during Prohibition. So, I mean, you got to give him credit.
Yeah, wow. Drove him to drink. Our Lord's specialty.
Speaking of tough old men here, Stomp, we got another one here. 72-year-old Montana man shoots a grizzly that attacked him while he was picking berries. This is horrifying. So Quinny, when you spent a lot of time in Alaska, can you talk a little bit about like the safety when you were so you were stationed in Kodiak?
Correct. Yep. Sure was.
What's the deal with the grizzlies, the Kodiak bears out there? Did you have any interactions with them?
No, not directly. I had one interaction with a black bear, which was, well, two actually, now that I think about it. But that was over in like Cordova. But in general, like the other thing coming into the dump, the bears really didn't kind of come into the area. But you always had to be aware that they were there, and try to make yourself big. Get loud, never get between, the bear and the sow. Right.
That's what this is talking about, actually.
Yeah. We as a matter of fact, a lot of the guys when we would go hiking, we'd end up like packing a 45. It was one of the things you never left home without it. You always had a sidearm. So something.
Okay. And that's big enough to take a grizzly out? Well, how many shots would you need for that?
It'll make it angry or hopefully make it run the other direction.
Or you get enough shots off before it gets to you. So.
You say if you grab a 9mm, it'll laugh at you. You'll be like, oh, that tickled. Now I'm going to eat you. You're like, oh, no.
Because I always just had this vision, like if you live in Alaska, like say you have to go out and walk your dog at nighttime or something like that, like you got to have your head on a swivel.
Yeah, especially during the summertime, for sure. Yeah.
Well, this story here. So, 72-year-old Montana man shoots a grizzly bear that attacked him while he was picking berries. He was in Flathead National Forest, and the grizzly charged him. They didn't identify the man, but he did shoot and kill this bear with his handgun. So he probably had a 45. Not a lot of details, but I guess the forest wardens and bear specialists responded to the incident and confirmed that it was an adult female grizzly, and they're trying to verify if there were any cubs present, but they didn't have any more additional information. But just out there picking berries, and Miss Grizzly Bear just showed up.
Wow, what's wild? I just noticed at the bottom of this story, it says more in animal attacks, and there's like a dozen other grizzly attack stories. So this is a cool article. They're happening out there, that's for sure. Wow.
Yeah, I'll take the friendly black bear on Lincoln Woods.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
All right. So 2 weeks ago we had a discussion about Quinny. Are you familiar with this? Like floating down like rivers, like the Pemigewasset River. Like Stomp lives up there. Like the townies, they all like to just float in these inner tubes on the river. So it's a fun time. I've done it a couple times.
That's awesome. I have not done it here in New England. I have done it in California quite a few times, but it's funny being here in New England. We grew up on a small little lake, so for me it was always on the lake. We didn't have to float. But
yeah. Same with me. That's what I do on the weekends. I'm up in Maine, and we just sit in our inner tube. But Stomp likes to go down the river. And 2 weeks ago, he was disparaging his wife. We call his wife Mrs. Stomp.
Yeah.
And I asked him if they like tie up together so that they can be close and enjoy. Stomp had disparaged Mrs. Stomp because he said that she uses a Shrek themed inner tube. And Mrs. Stomp had asked us to put in a correction and said it is most definitely not a Shrek inner tube. It's Sully from Monsters, Inc. So
shame. Yes. How could I make that brazen error? So
yes,
I'm in the doghouse.
His punishment, so your punishment now is that she bought you a new float that you're going to be forced to float in, and we don't know what the theme is going to be. So we'll post some pictures on our social.
Yeah, it's coming. I know what it is. We just received it, and it's pretty cheesy, but we'll save the picture for soon.
Love it.
Anyway,
I love it. God bless our wives.
Yes. She did not let that. So at least she listens. But I don't think my wife listens anymore.
No, she was like legit, like aggravated that I didn't know the difference between Shrek and Sully. So I ended up posting the picture of this damn thing on Instagram because it looked like Shrek, but it was blue. Like I'm supposed to realize that Shrek isn't blue. So, I just don't focus on that stuff. But this tube looked like Shrek. For goodness sakes. I'm holding my ground. I'll take the punishment.
You're up to a lot of nonsense, Stomp.
So, you're going to be sitting in like a Minion tube.
Yes.
Oh, you wouldn't believe the kind of tubes you see on the river. It's hilarious. It's a great time.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Stomp. Why don't you do this next article here, because I don't know where you're going with this. So it's uncontacted tribes. So the only thing I know about uncontacted tribes is the island off of India that you're not supposed to go to, where they killed one guy. But I don't know where you're going with this one.
So it's just interesting because I didn't know that there were actually uncontacted tribes out there still, and apparently that is the case. So this story has pictures taken from a drone, apparently, of natives of this tribe. Wherever this may be, I believe this is in Brazil,
Peru.
Yeah, Bolivia, that area. And it has pictures of them shooting arrows up at this drone that's taking pictures. I thought it was fascinating. I'm like, wait a minute, this is 2024 and there are still uncontacted tribes out there? And I just thought it was very interesting. And then I was listening to a podcaster who came up with this really interesting point. So you have this drone looking down at this tribe, and he made the parallel between humans and what we're hearing about lately with these unidentified flying objects. Like perhaps those aliens in those UFOs flying by are doing exactly what we're doing with these tribe members. It is a very interesting point. Like, oh, wow. Oh.
It's a unique perspective.
Yeah, very interesting. So it's just food for thought. Interesting to think about. But yes, apparently they're still out there.
Yeah. I know. I don't know about this tribe here, but I do know there is one uncontacted tribe in the Indian Ocean that there's like a 2-mile perimeter where no one's supposed to go near them. But
That's fascinating.
This is cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. That's all I got, Mike.
All right, that was interesting. So moving on to a new story here. There's a fatality on Half Dome. So, Quinny, have you been up the Yosemite? Have you climbed Half Dome?
Climbed? No, but I've seen it from the ground, like on the bottom side. So I've hiked through the park. Beautiful park. So,
beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you didn't do the cables. You bypassed that section.
Yep, or it was just jam packed and full when we went through. I went through my daughters, and they were young at the time, like 9, 8, 7. So.
Yeah. So I was out there last year. I camped like a little Yosemite camp, and then we did climb it. And unfortunately, last week, and it's prime time right now. There's a ton of people going up there because what they do is they take the cables down in the winter. So for 5-6 months out of the year, it's just the cables that you can go up. But then in this time of the year, they put the stanchions in, which is the railing part, and then they also put crossboards down, and this story, unfortunately, there was a fatality. A 20-year-old hiker from, I think, Arizona. Her and her father had done a road trip up to Yosemite. I guess they're pretty avid hikers, and they did the day hike. So some people will do an overnight and then the next morning wake up and do it. It's a short hike from the campsite, but they did. I think they hiked in. They left at 8 in the morning. There was some weather forecasted later in the day, but by the time they got up there, it's about an 8-mile hike to get to the top of Half Dome from the lower portion of the valley. By the time they got up there, they got on Subdome. Everything looked clear. They were able to get up the cables and get to the summit. As they were up there, the father, I guess, looked and said, "Look, it looks like there's some weather coming in." Unfortunately, the weather came in quick. They got caught at the top during the rainstorm, and as they're going down, essentially with the deal with these cables is it's 400 feet, and you're at 45 to 60 degree angle. It's really not that bad. You hang on to the cables, and then you've got these crossboards that you can stand on that give you leverage. So you basically go from one crossboard to another, hanging onto the cables.
Wow.
The problem is that, and going up is not too bad. I mean, it's steep, and if you're afraid of heights, like, you can get freaked out. And there was definitely some people that were freaked out when I got on it, and it slows everybody down because you're at the mercy of all the people that are on the cable. You could be 40 people on the cable at any one time going up and down, and you're passing people too. So that's the other tricky part, is that some people are bigger than others, and it's not a wide section, so you pass people. But unfortunately, in this situation, the father and the daughter are coming down. The unfortunate part about the way that the cables are set up is that there's 2 spots lower down where there's a crossboard, take a step, and then another crossboard where you can just get leverage on it. If you're a regular height, I'm 5'7", 5'8". That was basically my experience. There's 2 sections down below. There's one section that has a little shelf, and then there's another section that has a shelf that goes parallel with the cables. So there's 2 sections that don't have crossboards along the stanchions. And I think what happened here is that essentially they got caught up high on the cable. Downpour comes in. They're dealing with slippery granite slate. And as they got lower down, they're on there for I don't know how long because people are slow and they're stuck on the cable because they can't pass anybody. And it sounds like what ended up happening here is that in one of the lower sections, she lost her footing. I suspect that she probably lost her footing in one of those sections where it's not just one step and hit the crossboard. It's probably like 2-3 steps, and then she was hanging onto the cable. Her feet came out from under her, and then she let go. And unfortunately, once you let go, once you're outside those cables, it's basically you're on a granite sled that's going to take you down. So she went down about 200 feet and unfortunately didn't survive.
Oh, ended up being a head fracture. That's horrible.
Yeah, horrible story. Yeah. Yep. So, and it sounds like it hits home to me because it's like the same thing. Like it's a father and daughter that are in a hiking, and my daughter's around the same age as this girl. So it's tough, but it's a dangerous thing there. And I've seen there were people that were clipping in, which in my opinion was slowing people down quite a bit. But I mean, in those conditions, what I read is people just said it's not ideal because you got to deal with lightning and stuff, but you're better off just waiting up top and finding as low of a spot as you can and hoping you don't get hit by lightning versus going on the cables.
Yeah. Interesting. Why do you think they take all that stuff down for the off season?
It's a permit. Yeah, they require you to have a permit, and I think it's a safety issue. They don't want
just strictly safety.
Yeah, I don't think they want to be sending rescue teams up there in the winter or in the late spring just because it's tougher to get up there. So they probably figure all right, the only people that are going to go up there are going to be people that really are motivated and experienced. So.
Got it. Wow, interesting. Sad stuff.
It is a bit of a clown show up there, I'll be honest with you. Like the people that I saw going up, there was one guy that was with I got the sense his girlfriend was a very hardcore hiker, and he was a fish out of water. He was like pale white, and I think she was dragging him along. But yeah, it's a bit of a clown show up there, to be honest.
Yeah, it looks like a Mount Everest conga line too.
Yeah, it can be. So.
Oh, well.
All right, Stomp. And then last but not least for news stories, there is a search and rescue event going on. So they activated a search team in Barrington, New Hampshire related to a murder out of Lynn, Massachusetts, going back, I think, about 10, 15 years. So looked like a pretty large search. So we'll see if they came up with anything.
Interesting.
Like a search for somebody alive, the murderer?
I think remains probably. They didn't really say, but they said it was connected to a decades-old missing person case. So I always just assume they're looking for a body, but maybe it's something else.
I have a cool story. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, definitely.
So I met this guy who came on the podcast. His name is Dylan Nelson, and his dog, Jacoby, and he's a cadaver dog. And some of his stories about what they used. He's down in Georgia. He was working with the National Guard, but he was called out by the FBI for stuff like that. And Jacoby ended up finding a deceased body underneath like brush and wrapped up in rugs at like 4 feet underground. Jacoby went right to it. FBI went in, guns drawn. Get down on the ground. You're under arrest. Great stories. Yeah. Anyway,
holy moly!
Great, call Dylan, have him come up. He can help out.
Yeah, well, you know what I always think of is like originally when I saw this story, I think of the Maura Murray case. I don't know if you're familiar with Maura Murray, but she was a UMass student that went missing in Haverhill, New Hampshire in like 2004. It's one of the most famous unsolved mystery cases, and she crashed her car. One of the neighbors pulled up and saw her, had a quick conversation, went in to call the police, and came back out, and she's never been seen since. So,
I'm not familiar with that. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
Yeah, terrible. And there's all kinds of theories. You know, she went to Canada to start a new life or whatever. But I think it's pretty likely she's in the woods somewhere, and it's just private property. No one's found her. But that's the way it would be found, is with like that kind of a cadaver dog.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yes, it is. It is. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that one and see what happens. But otherwise, Stomp, any updates on our... So do you do merch on your podcast, by the way, Quinny?
I do. RealResQStore.com, yeah.
Yeah, I saw your store. Yeah, his stuff is much better than ours.
It is.
Yeah, I'm very jealous.
I was gonna order a bunch of new patches, but I'm putting it on hold until like October. But I get some other stuff coming too, which is cool. I don't want to ruin all the surprises, but there's stuff coming.
All right. Yeah. All right, we'll link to your merch store. Like we just have our pathetic little patches, so we dabble. We got a lot of stickers and patches. We do have like T-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff too.
But, I'll send you guys some stickers and patches too. It'll be good.
All right. Yeah, we'll send you the same.
We'll do a fair trade here.
I like that.
Yeah, the patches are flying off the shelf. So we've sent out like 50 of them, or we'll soon send out. If anybody's interested in the patch, we're just doing one bulk mailing after the 2nd. So this show is coming out on Friday the 2nd. So over the weekend, we're going to wrap it up and probably mail them out by like Monday or something like that. So last chance to get your patches, put them in this weekend, and we'll get them out to everybody who wants them. They're $15 to cover the mailing and the production of the patches themselves. And if you see us live at a show or in person, they're $10. So yeah, they're really nice. The iron, I've never had luck with patches with the iron-on glue in the back, but this patch worked like a charm. So I have it on a shirt of mine, and a few other listeners have done it without any issue whatsoever. So top-notch work from Embroidery, Evergreen Embroidery in Campton. Thank you, guys. So yeah, very cool.
Awesome. All right, Stomp. And then just to recap, so we were recording on the Friday night before Seek the Peak, and then I had to do family time. I did get out on Sunday, but I didn't get out on Saturday. But you got out on Sunday, and then apparently, did you save somebody's life on? You went out on Saturday. Did you save somebody's life or something when you were out there? Is that what I heard?
This is my kind of story. You're right up my alley right now.
You're going to be disappointed, but okay.
What is this? I don't know what you're talking about. Is this?
Oh, I thought you said that from the script. I thought it said you did a good hiking deed. I'm assuming that means you saved somebody's life.
No, not at all.
Sorry, Quinny.
No, but this is pretty cool. I just did my good deed for the hiking community. I was driving home from work, and I saw a stinky thru hiker come through Lost River, and I immediately pulled over, picked him up, and dropped him off, 6 miles down the road to the hostel. That's my
So
good
you did
deed.
save a life.
Well,
we call that
the kid
an
was
assist.
really shocked. That wasn't. Yeah, it was an assist, but it was a big assist because when the dude got out of my truck, it was like sweaty and my passenger seat in the truck's all wet and soaked and gross. I'm like, man, I took one for the team for sure. No, he's a really nice guy. He's going southbound. He's a Florida former Marine, and he's just tackling it southbound. And he was cruising through. He was talking about hitting Mount Washington during the Seek to Peak and seeing all the conga line, all the people. And he had just talked about passing Mount Wolf, which is interesting because apparently there's a big crew out there working on all those bog bridges on Kinsman Ridge Trail. And I asked him, like, were they backpacking out there? Because that's not an easy place to get to. So apparently, yeah, they backpacked out with all the nails, all the tools, and they're rebuilding a lot of those bridges on that trail, which, as you know, it's pretty notorious for just being a swampy mess at times, like deep bogs. So that's good news. So yeah, I did my good deed. Picked up a sweaty through hiker. I'm going to go straight through the pearly gates.
Do you have like a system that you use to differentiate when you have to make that decision to pick up a hitchhiker or just pick up do you have like a system where you can determine whether or not, because it's a fine line whether or not it's a through hiker or a serial killer. So do you feel like you got a pretty good radar for that stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this it was all circumstantial too. So this kid was literally crossing the street, leaving Kinsman Ridge Trail to go to the Lost River parking lot. He had the backpack with the rain guard over the backpack, and he looked like a hiker. Tall, fairly fit, whatever. So yeah, that was a no-brainer. I usually pick up hitchhikers that have packs on, unless they're carrying 5-foot ladders and have an AR on them or something like that. I'll pass on them, but yeah, I always pick them up.
Yeah.
Or a shovel and a bag of lime. That's always red flag on that one.
Yeah. So I picked a few hitchhikers up on Pinkham Notch, and I was pretty sure that I was going to be safe. But yeah, right. Well, I'm glad that you're safe, and that's a nice, good deed, Stump. So
you're welcome.
We all know that hiking a mountain can be hard at times. So here's a corny dad joke to help you get over it. Ba-dum-bum.
Quinny, we do this segment, which is a dad joke. So do you know dad jokes?
I love dad jokes. I love them. Right. I do them all the time to my daughters. I make stuff up too. It's great.
All right, so I'm going to do one or two dad jokes, and then if you have anything you want to throw in off the top of your head, let me know. But okay. And Stump, we're going to skip the pop culture thing because we're running long.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, so here's one. I understand how batteries feel because I'm often not included either. Here's another one. 2 science teachers from my school just got married. I guess they had a lot of chemistry.
Oh, nice.
So, okay. Nice. All right.
These are traditional puns. Aren't these puns? These aren't jokes.
These are puns. There's a little bit of a mix.
Okay,
So
all right.
Thank you to Camilla and Lance for my 365 days of dad jokes, or bad jokes, as you could say.
Yeah, totally.
I love them.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right.
All right, Stump, this is the part of the show where we do advertiser, Fieldstone Kombucha.
Is it Fieldstone first? Yes, you're right. And this is the last of the run. So I've had a chance to have Fieldstone in the past, and they're fantastic. So check it out. Fieldstone Kombucha is New England's premier craft kombucha company. If you're in the heart of New England, you need to drink a New England-style kombucha. Softer, less acidic, and truly enjoyable, our kombucha is naturally effervescent and boasts full-bodied flavor. Fieldstone crafts the best seasonal flavors. When we tell you there's strawberries in our Garden Blush flavor, it's like biting into a sun-ripened strawberry. Woman-owned and operated, we brew in Rhode Island using locally sourced ingredients. Fieldstone Kombucha is the perfect replenishing drink after a day on the slopes or a trek in the woods. It's chock full of probiotics and healthy acids to keep you in top form. Find us at Sunflower Natural Foods in Laconia, La Tasse Cafe in Waterville Valley, the Concord Food Co-op, and Granite State Food Co-op in Concord as well, and many other locations. And check out the website for a full list of New Hampshire and New England-wide locations. Use code SLASHER, SLASR, on the website for 10% off an online order that ships straight to your door. That's FieldstoneKombuchaCo.com. Cool stuff. Little reminder, you can get your Slasher stickers at Ski Fanatics off of exit 28 or in Mass for anybody in the area on Dascom Road. Exit. What exit is Dascom Road? Off of 93.
I have no idea. They changed all the exit numbers around. So
of course they did.
Yeah, they went to miles, so I'm all. I can't help you anymore.
Well, Spinner's Pizza is in Ballardvale in Andover, so you can stop by and say hi to Dolls and Pops and get your stickers there. And you can also check out our online swag shop at the Bonfire Store, which is linked on our Instagram link tree. And then we have another quick little advertiser by CS Coffee. Our podcast is also supported by CS Instant Coffee, makers of eco-friendly instant coffee. It's perfect for anyone who loves the outdoors as much as we do. Great for backpacking, day hiking, camping, and even at home. Learn more and get in touch at www.csinstant.coffee or email them at info@cs.instant.coffee. Right on.
Hey, hold my beer. It's time to find out what Mike and Stomp are drinking. On this week's Beer Talk.
Excellent. So this is the part of the show where we talk about if we're drinking, what we're drinking. I am drinking a beer this evening. Then Stomp, are you drinking anything, or did you? Quinny's looking at it. He's like, "Oh crap, did I forget?"
I forgot.
I didn't know. No. I forgot to tell you.
That's okay. So Quinny, your name's almost like Quint. So Quint is the captain from Jaws, and of course we were talking about orcas earlier. So I grabbed a zero gravity Jaws. Right? How'd I do, Mike? Good.
Yeah, that works.
Thematic, and it's a crisp Pilsner beer featuring Czech ingredients, smooth and snappy on the palate, big and bitey. Get it? Big and bitey on the finish.
Shark with the fin. It's big and bitey. That's good. That's good.
We're going to be talking about the ocean a lot tonight, so
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then I'm drinking a Friendly Neighbor IPA. So I think my wife bought these for me as a joke because I've been fighting with my neighbor.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's good. And then Quinny told us to just give it a second. So you Stomp, have you given up on the beer making? Remember you used to you made like a beer, you were brewing something?
Yeah, hold on. Let me open my beer for a minute.
Oh, damn it.
All right. So this is just for you guys, okay?
Okay.
So because it was sitting on the counter, I'm going to be drinking literally Quinn's whiskey.
What?
From Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, not bad.
All right.
Sweet.
It's a delicious whiskey, all right? And I am pouring it on the rocks. And I'm going to pour it right now just for you guys. Because I don't...
You're giving off Jigger Johnson vibes right now.
What do you mean? Oh, that means I got to be mean for a minute. I can't do that. I smile too much.
That's awesome.
So,
but this is just for you guys right here, okay? We're just going to get above the ice, all right?
You're breaking my heart.
See, I'm not a big, I don't do the hard liquor stuff, but Stomp, I think, does it. So,
sure.
Well, cheers to you, boys.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. Great to have you.
I knew we should have gone left back there. Stomp, don't worry. I know it's this way. I've got a feeling in my gut.
Are you sure you're not about to have a bowel emergency?
Totally. We got this.
But I just blew out my hip. Fell down that gully with my 40-year-old microspikes.
Suck it up, Stomp. It's 4 p.m. We're at 3,500 feet. We got 9 miles back to the parking lot. Your leg may be broken. We got no cell connection, and we can't feel our fingers. But we're finishing all of my list tonight. By the way, I need some water. I'm empty.
I would if I could see what I'm doing, but my headlamp batteries are dead.
You gotta be kidding me. What a chump. This is the last time I hike with you.
Whatever, mister. Do you know me? I have a podcast.
Whatever.
Let's find out what Mike and Stomp have been hiking.
No, Stomp, this is the part of the show where we do recent hikes. So I didn't get out on Saturday, but I did get out on Sunday with my wife's cousins. So cousin Jess, cousin Bo, and cousin Mac, shout out to them.
Yeah.
They just want to do a small family hike. So I took them up to Pleasant Mountain in Denmark, which is one of my local hikes over in Maine. And Max is like second grade, I think. So he was dragging a little bit. The thing about Pleasant Mountain is when you go up to the I forget what it's called, Bald Ridge Trail, I think is the one that we go to, and it's steep. So it starts off steep right away. So he's pretty good. He's in pretty good shape. He had swam all day the day before, and he's got good energy. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But he got a little bored. But then we got to the higher sections, and he started finding toads on the trail, so he was fired up at that point. And then I told him we were going to go blueberry picking. Yeah, so he was all fired up with the toads. And I told him we were going to go blueberry picking, and trust me that it's going to be awesome. And we did get up on top, and there was like fields and fields of blueberries like everywhere. So
excellent.
Yeah, we were able to pick blueberries, and he scored pretty well. We got some big ones. I don't think it's prime time yet. I think it's another week or two. But if you're out there, at least in Western Maine, and I know I saw a bunch of blueberry bushes like in Caribou Mountain and over in Evans Notch, like there's definitely blueberry season for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah.
We got them all around us as well. It's beautiful down here.
Yeah, so I was thinking like we had a good time just like picking them individually, but I have seen up in Maine like a lot of people will bring the blueberry rakes up. So they're like essentially these little scoops with the combs, and you can just go right through and collect a bunch. So I'll put a link to a couple of the blueberry rakes that you can buy in the show notes in case anyone wants to get hardcore about it. But they're all over the place. I mean, the other place, I think the Moat Mountains have a lot of blueberry bushes, if I recall correctly. But they're, especially if you're a bushwhacker, you can find all kinds of spots to get blueberries.
Yeah, I think the sweet spot's like 2,200, like in that range for elevation. Like we just did that Squam Traverse, and they were literally everywhere, like a mile stretch of them. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's exactly nice. Like that. The Western Maine where I go, like Pleasant Mountain and Burnt Meadow are between like I think 1,600 and 2,400 feet of elevation. So they're just everywhere, all over those mountains.
Are you talking the lower bushes, right? Like lower to the ground?
Yeah, they're basically up to your like calves, then you just got to bend over and pick them. But so we had a good time. And
down here, so I'm in Ashburnham, Massachusetts, and down here, there's actually a hill called Blueberry Hill that has that. And we used to go up there as kids. Yeah, child labor laws got in the way, but we used to scoop them for all the guys down there so they could make blueberry wine and whatnot. But here on the lake, they're all, we got big bushes, the ones that are much taller, 6-8 feet tall. And it's kind of funny. My wife actually, I'll send you guys a little video. She's got a video of the ducks coming on the grass, and they're hopping up to pick the blueberries off the bushes.
Really?
Yeah. I'll send it to you. It's awesome. It's like a little fog on the water. It's a beautiful scene, but it's cute.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I wouldn't imagine that the ducks could get the blueberries, but it's a great family activity. So it's around this time of the year, late July. So if you've got kids and you don't want to do anything crazy, like these Western Maine mountains, Burnt Meadow, Pleasant Mountain, Bald Mountain is another one in Bridgeton. Those are all great to go to, and they've all got, Cutler Mountain is another one over by me. They've all got blueberries around, so it's definitely recommended. And Stomp, have you been out anywhere?
Oh, no, I haven't. Last weekend was busy with Seek the Peak and that race, Jigger Johnson, so hadn't got out. Big plans this weekend with Nobby. Hopefully finish his T25 list, but we'll see.
What's he got to do to finish?
All right, so we have to do Madison Gulf Trail, Spinks Trail, and Six Husbands, which Quinny, they're off of the presidential range. So we're going to tackle all three. That's the goal.
Wow, that's a lot.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a 14-mile day. So we're planning on going up in one car, going to the Gulf side, going up Madison, Gulf Trail, skirt around Adams, down Spinks, and then up Six Husbands. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. So up Madison, down Buttress, then up Six Husbands, then down Spinks, and then out.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not going to be bad. It's long mileage, but as we know,
it's going to be bad.
Gulf side. What am I talking about here? Great Gulf Trail.
It's going to be bad, Quinny.
Great Gulf Trail.
It's going to be a lot of up and down for 14 miles.
My God. Brutal. Well, are you doing this on Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday. So it's going to be a high of 80. Clear.
I have to go. I got to run some errands with my daughter on Saturday, so I can't go. But I'm going to be in the same area on Sunday. We're going to do the Adams Slide.
Oh, nice.
Which is an abandoned trail that's between the Buttress Trail and Six Husbands.
Yeah. Well, by the time this show comes out, we'll have done it or not, so that'll be interesting playing catch up. But yeah, wish us luck. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's 2 uphills, and the Madison Gulf head wall is only like 300 feet in point 2. So, I mean, it's going to be all right. I've done the Sphinx Trail a million times. I know exactly what that is. I have watched videos about Six Husbands. Looks gnarly.
Yeah.
Looks gnarly.
Madison Gulf is, I mean, it's sort of like, it's mossy. It's like the Great Gully a little bit, but then you pop out.
Bouldery.
It's slick. It's green, a lot of green mossy boulders, and then it's essentially similar to Sphinx in that respect. Six Husbands is no problem. The only issue I've had with Six Husbands is just finding my way around on the lower portion.
Okay,
I got lost a little bit there, but but Quinny, have you been in the Whites lately? Have you hiked anywhere recently?
So I have hiked recently, but not in the Whites. So down here where I live in Ashburnham, we have a trail called the Mid-State Trail that goes from New Hampshire to Rhode Island, or reverse. And it's literally right by our house. So we went up to the north part and we hiked like up Watadic Mountain is part of the trail, to almost the New Hampshire line. We had a couple of kids with us, so it was really just hike up the mountain and back. And mountain, hill, large hill.
Yeah.
So, but that's, it's a beautiful trail, and I forget how much it's just a wonderful, nobody's on it. Like, if you want to be alone in the woods, the trail that nobody's on, go hit the Mid-State Trail up north. It's awesome. So
cool.
Yeah, matter of fact, the guy that Stomp was just talking about, who he's hiking with, I believe that he did that whole Mid-State. He did the whole thing from Rhode Island up into New Hampshire.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's only like I think it's 91 miles total.
Yeah.
And you got to get dropped off. Just
a monster.
Oh yeah.
Oh, this kid's great. He's done a lot of these long trails. He's quiet about it, but he's done a lot of really impressive things.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, Stomp. So we're going to skip notable hikes as we're going long here, but we got to do 48 Peaks advertiser here.
Let's do that. So use your passion for hiking to help end Alzheimer's. In one collective effort, 400 plus hikers will climb New Hampshire's 4,000 footers or create their own hiking challenge to advance the care, support, and research efforts of the Alzheimer's Association. Hike anytime this summer and help turn the White Mountains purple to end Alzheimer's. No fundraising minimums required, but you can unlock fun prizes as you fundraise. So visit alts.org/48 peaks to learn more.
Very good. Quinny, do you sweat a lot? Are you a sweaty guy?
It depends on the workout.
It depends on the workout. Well, Stomp is a very sweaty guy, so we have an advertiser that has a product that helps with his sweat issues.
Yeah, here we go.
Right on.
Does your back? Oh, you're gonna love it. This is so cool. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's called Vaucluse gear, and they make a ventilation backpack frame. So does your back sweat too much when backpacking? As you know, sweat can be extremely uncomfortable on the trails, and sweat is a serious risk factor in both hot and cold climates. As your clothes get wet, your core temperature can dramatically fluctuate, and this can result in hypothermia, heat exhaustion, and dehydration. Let's not forget, just very uncomfortable. Today's your lucky day because we have good news for you. There's a piece of gear that solves the sweat and ventilation problem, making your backpack more comfortable. Vaucluse Gear's ultralight backpack ventilation frame. This ultralight frame is a backpack accessory that easily installs in your favorite pack, sizes 15 liters to 45 liters, and creates a ventilating airflow gap between you and your pack. It's also ultralight, weighing around 3 ounces, which is equivalent to a pair of wool socks. Whether hiking in hot or cold temps, the ultralight backpack ventilation frame from Vaucluse Gear is a real game changer regarding airflow and ventilation. So visit them at vauclusegear.com to order an ultralight ventilation frame today. Use promo code SLASHER to enjoy a $5 discount and let them know that Mike and Stomp sent you.
Very good. Yeah, for the listeners, I just grabbed my backpack to show Quinny so that he could see what the frame looks like. So yeah, it's just a light piece of plastic that has 2 segments that go together, and it just creates like an air flow on your back when you're, especially like if it's hot and you get above tree line and the wind starts blowing a little bit, like it really dries your back down pretty quickly.
That's great.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
It's time for Slasher's Guest of the Week. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So, all right, Quinny, this is your segment. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, let's go.
Okay. So, and
do I need to take a drink real quick? Oh gosh.
Yeah, take a shot here. So, but welcome to the podcast. So, Stomp, how did you connect with Quinny?
I knew you were going to ask me that, but I think we just connected on via email, Quinny, if I remember correctly. Yeah, straightforward, little back scratching.
He'll go on any podcast if he's joining us.
Yeah. And I think we should have a drinking game. If Quinny says swim, then we have to drink. How's that sound? Is that good?
No, that's not a good idea.
That's not good. That's not.
Already it's because I'm here. This episode's going to go longer than normal. I'm just saying.
Right. That's great. So Jason, why don't you start off by introducing yourself? Maybe talk a little bit about your early life and what led you up to the point where you decided to join the Coast Guard.
Sure. So born and raised here in Massachusetts, loved life. I was an outdoor kid. So all the mountains and all the trails you guys are talking about, like I was in and around this area growing up. It was amazing. I'm going to fast forward real quick, just right to high school. And towards the end of high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and everybody's like, oh, you should go to college, you go work for your dad, you can do construction, you do this. And my uncle said, well, why don't you join the Coast Guard? I'm in the Coast Guard. Come join the Coast Guard. And I was like, I guess. I don't know. And so he said, well, hey, come down to Boston with me. So my uncle at the time was the commanding officer of Station Boston. So I go down and hang out a bit with him, and then he sets me up going around all these different guys doing their different jobs throughout Boston, and one of them in particular was a boat. We ended up cruising out in the Boston Harbor. Just saying. All right. So we're cruising out in this little 41-foot boat, and we go back to the dock, and all of a sudden you hear alarms and sirens and stuff going off, and they're like, get off the boat. And I'm like, why? And they're like, we got a search and rescue call. And I'm like, I want to go. What? Get off. No, let's go. And they're like, get off. And from then on, I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. So
that
was the inspiration to getting into the Coast Guard.
FOMO.
Yeah, it was cool. So
and when you join the Coast Guard, do you have any? Do you just join from the perspective of I'm just going to get in the Coast Guard and then I'll figure out what my path within the Coast Guard is at a later date, or did you have a vision I want to do this specific thing in the Coast Guard?
Nope, definitely the first one. I had no idea, not a clue.
Yeah,
I didn't
just
know.
Let me get in.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you talk to different people, and I'll throw out all the services in there for people that want to join the service. Highly recommended. It was an amazing thing for me, and it's everybody that I talked to that's been in the service, has served our country. Great things come from it. Everybody has stories of bad things, but I'll tell you, I'm a key component. Let's go. Just go join, go enjoy life and have some fun, and then get out whenever you're ready. But for me, the other thing I was going to say is as people get in, some people will do the due diligence and research exactly what they want to do in the military branch they go into. Others, like myself, had no idea. And I remember standing in boot camp, and one of our company commanders is coming down the line. He's like, what do you want to do? I want to be a bosun's mate. What do you want to do? I want to be a bosun's mate. Well, he gets to me. He's like, what do you want to do? I was like, be a bosun's mate. He's like, we got a bunch of bosun's mates here. What? I didn't even know what a bosun's mate was. But I didn't know. And then they're showing videos of guys jumping out of helicopters. I'm like, yes, please. That's right up my alley. So that's how that happened.
But I have to imagine a lot of people, they look at that person jumping out of the helicopter and they say, yeah, that's what I want to do. But then when it comes to you got to put the work in and you've got to do the training, it's not as simple as just enlisting. So I'm assuming a lot of people wash out, or they have a realistic internal discussion with themselves to say like, all right, well, maybe I'm not cut out for that level of engagement within the Coast Guard. But can you talk a little bit about that? And I'm assuming some people, maybe they're just like so clueless that they just stumble into it and no one tells them they can't do it, so they end up doing it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say people are clueless and stumble into that one.
Okay.
Because what you know, when you start going down the route to be a rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard, you start learning very quickly of what it takes to become a rescue swimmer and the journey to get there. And it is 60% dropout rate. I think it's still the same now. When I went through to now, the program started in 1985 after a large like an incident that happened off of North Carolina, the Marine Electric. They lost 22 lives. It was all bad. Congress came out and said, what are you guys doing? I thought you were premier Coast Guard service, and how come you don't have rescue swimmers? Puff, rescue swimmer program was made. So 1985 to now, like from the recording of this podcast, there are just shy of 1,100 of us in that time. So that's where, and we're all numbered. That's where I get number 500. But
yeah, that's a cool number for you. Now, is it fair to say? So I have some friends that, like, I have one friend that's an Army Ranger. Is it fair to say you're the equivalent of those special forces that people may be more familiar with, like the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers, the Green Beret, what have you? Is rescue swimming an equivalent of that special forces in the Coast Guard?
So what I will say to that is that I did not do any special forces training. Like, I'm not sniper. I'm not rolling up on somebody to kill the bad guy, right? At the same time, I will say the training that we went through is the most difficult in the U.S. Coast Guard, and that's why there's a 60% dropout rate. It's hard. You're almost comparing apples to oranges. It's like, oh, how hard was it to be a police officer? How hard was it to be a firefighter? Well, they're not the same job, but both they have their path. And that's where the Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer program comes in. It is a very difficult school to get through, and you have to have a lot of grit to get through and mental fortitude to be able to push through everything they throw at you. For those that reference the movie The Guardian with Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher, that's pretty accurate. There's a couple of things I didn't do from that movie, but there's a lot of things I did in that movie. So I was like, yeah.
Wow. And how long were you in the Coast Guard before you had the opportunity to attend the training?
I was in for about 2 years. So I went to Washington, D.C. first, spent 2 years there in the Honor Guard, and then went down to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where I went through an airman program, which is kind of learning aviation, and then into swimmer school specifically, so to learn the job.
And then in your bio, you talk about it's 60% attrition typically for the training, but you talk about in your particular group. So you had a cohort. It sounds like 7 or 8 people that trained, and all 8. Well, not all of the 8 of them made it through that particular class, but all 8 eventually did become rescue swimmers. I think you said like 7 out of 8. So what was unique about that? Was this a crew of people that you just met on day one of training, or was there already an established relationship between your cohort?
Good question. And actually, all of us met on day one. It just so happened that our class was a very strong class. The guy that did not pass with our class specifically, Shane Crew, he went on 4 classes later and passed. But it was, we all worked really well together, and we kept each other motivated to continue on. And I think that was a key. I can't speak for other classes and what happened with guys that drop out and stuff, but I remember being in the pool at night, doing our swim, and it was like after the first or second lap, this kid just got out of the pool and was like, this isn't for me. I want to go back to my boat station. And you're like, really? You're gonna quit? It's a night pool session. All you got to do is swim laps. Like, what's wrong with you? But hey, not for him. Cool. So
did you have a swim background before you joined the Coast Guard?
Other than growing up on a lake and jumping out of boats, like going 30 miles an hour down the lake? Not really.
Were you an athlete in high school?
Yeah, basketball, track and field. Yeah, kind of your standard grow up, like be athletic. But I was outdoorsy as well, which, like, again, you guys talk about all these hikes and stuff. Like I lived on the Mid-State Trail. I was always out there on that, always hiking mountains, just living in the backyard, building forts and stuff. So never inside watching TV, always outside doing stuff. So I think it was what brought me into it.
Yeah. Were you always the type of person that, I mean, you have to have perseverance, and I think you have to be able to push through discomfort, and it takes a certain mindset to be able to do that. Were you always like that growing up, or was that something you think you just developed as you got older?
I think for me personally, I learned it as I got older. It's interesting what you're willing to put up with and willing to go through. There are things you see on the other side. And I think a lot of people do that. They see the other side and they know what's coming and they know what they can have if they grit through it. So I think that's, and again, that's kind of a personal opinion. But for me specifically, I had people that looked at me and like, yeah, you won't make it through swimmer school. And that was motivation for me. Like, yeah, tell me I can't do it. Let's see how that goes. Yeah. Let's go. Of course. Right?
Was some of the officers or commanders that were running did they play those head games with you as well? Like, you guys are the worst class ever, and to motivate you, or was it very much they just relied on you to motivate yourself?
No, actually they relied on us to motivate ourselves, and really it was kind of cool for them. Other than the standard workouts that they would put us through, and I say workouts because that's what they really are, but you're on the grinder. That was on land portion, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, running, sprints, lunges, flutter kicks. God bless a flutter kick. My goodness, we did thousands, and that's not an exaggeration, thousands of flutter kicks. And then you would get in the pool, and you'd have your pool days. So you do your swims, your underwaters, your buddy toes, your rescues, life-saving drills, and all of that stuff just continued on. So it was up to us to be motivated to continue. Those guys were like, you want to quit? Walk away. There was occasional, like, you want this to stop? Just say, drop on request. That's all you got to say, and you can walk home. That's all you got to say. Yeah. You want the pain to stop? This is all you got to say. Other than that, we're going to keep going. And you know it's going to end eventually, but you have to get in that mindset of, like, you know it's going to end. Like, they're not going to do it forever. They have to go to sleep too. Yeah. So, yeah. Suck it up, Buttercup. Let's go.
Right. So, wow. What about the cold water and the cold condition? Did they condition? Is that something you can get conditioned to, or is that just something that when you're training you just have to manage with equipment?
You guys are wearing dry suits, right?
Correct.
Typically.
I think it's more managed with equipment than anything else. And then you just something you learn to bear in the unit you're at. So when I got up to Alaska, like, the reference I use is the kid in the Christmas Story. Like, I can't put my arms down. That was me getting into a dry suit. I'm like, got like 15 layers on. I'm like, I am not going to be cold. I can't grab anybody right now, but I'm not going to be cold.
Wow. And then so eventually you graduate, and then when you graduate, does everyone go to Alaska, or do you get sent all around?
We have so the cool thing about the Coast Guard specifically is you fill out a dream sheet. I understand that the other militaries have that, but again, no, I wasn't in them. So Coast Guard, you fill out like, I would like to go here, here, and here. What the detailer does, he'll come back and say, here's the open units that you can go to. For us coming out of school, they gave us a bunch of picks and they said, here's what it is. And there were guys that were in Barbers Point, Hawaii. There was an opening back in New Orleans, another one down in Puerto Rico, and then mine up in Alaska. And one of my buddies, my classmates, came up to Alaska with me because they needed 2 guys up there. So, but I mean, it worked out well. I loved being in Alaska. My goodness, it was amazing. So.
Yeah, and the helicopters is like a critical part of what you're, what you're interacting with during the training. Was there any aspect of helicopter training, or was that something you learned afterwards when you went through the swimming? I'm assuming it's integrated into the training, right?
Yes, but only at the very end. It's like the congratulations, you've made it through the heart of school in the Coast Guard, and now all your training, you actually get to jump out of a H-60 into the water. And I tell you, man, when the first about 15, 20 feet, give or take, they come down pretty low to the water. And there's reasons behind that. I'll get into that in a sec. But when you're that first time and you're sitting your fins and your legs are hanging like outside the cabin door and the helicopter rolls down and they give you the tap and you're like, I'm about to jump out of this thing right now. Oh my, what? So you get all motivated. Oh yeah, your first time out, you're like, this is the greatest day of my life. I blast. But yeah, so the 15, 20 feet. So when they come down to that level, because the rotor wash, and a lot of people don't think about this, you're sitting below a giant fan, right? So the rotor wash is that fan that's blowing down. So when you jump out, you have that inertia and that push from the fan to the water. So you go a little faster than normal. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've done a bunch of cliff jumping and, you know, like you're out up in the quarries, Quabbin Quarry and stuff. We're growing up out here. And, right? So you have fun doing that, but you don't have a giant rotor head over the top of you pushing you faster to the water. So
I never thought of that. So if you're 15 feet and you got a helicopter blade above you, that can be you'll generate speed like you're at 30 feet or 40 feet.
Correct. Yeah. Wow. So that's why they try to get low.
And just working in that tight environment, I'm assuming like your equipment's mostly on, but then you still have to get your gear ready, and then you've got more bulky gear that you're maneuvering in a small space. Did it take a long time to get used to that?
That's all training.
The confined. It's just training.
Yeah, when we're going through swimmer school, everything's on you. Like everything you go out the door with is what's on you. Mask, fan, snorkel. We wear a full integrated harness known as the Triton, made by Life Saving Systems, and it's actually upgraded to the Triton 2 now, which is even cooler. But yeah, they got all the pockets with all your survival gear, your flares, your signal mirror, your whistle, radio, EPIRB. You know, everything's on you. So if you ever have to be left on scene, you can survive.
And how long were you in Alaska for?
3 years.
3 years. Did you start to develop any sixth sense around like, all right, I'm feeling a vibe this weekend, or I'm looking at the weather and, you know, we may go out, or was it never, you never got that? Because Stomp Search and Rescue up in New Hampshire, and he gets a vibe sometimes.
So he'll Stomp, like, good on you, man.
Yeah, but it's not predictable enough, and you know the Alaska conditions aren't predictable enough.
Let me ask you, Stomp. Like when you, all right, so the vibe that you get, right? So are you ground party, or is it ground party search and rescue?
Both at times. I mean, at times we'll be ferried by Black Hawk and whatnot, but it's a combination of things. It's not just that do. It's weather, it's temperature. It's like, you know, just consistent patterns that you start to get a little nervous. Like, oh man, there's bound to be something this weekend.
Gotcha. Yeah. For me, it was never like that. It was just like you're standing by when the alarm goes off, and I get it where you're watching hurricane season for the boys down in the Gulf and whatnot. They know stuff is coming at that point. But when I was in Alaska, it was just, it could be clear blue 22 and all of a sudden you're going out for something, you know, some dude got hurt on a boat, or a boat's taking on water. I had that too, like boats up on the rocks, and the guys had fallen asleep, the tide went out, busted a hole in the bottom, and now we're lowering pumps to them to dewater the boat so they can get back home to port. So
with hiking, it's interesting too, because you have the witching hour, 5 o'clock. People are descending. They're tired. They may not have hydrated or eaten enough on the way down, and sure enough, they slip. So it's a little more predictable in that sense. Yeah.
Well, so it's funny. Like, I mean, Coast Guard is, majority of their stuff is offshore, but there are some times that I was called out to mountain rescue stuff in Alaska, and one of them I remember specifically was a couple guys. A guy and a girl went hiking up, and all of a sudden he had like a super elevated heart rate, and they couldn't walk anymore. So we went in, hoisted me down, and I did a quick evaluation. I was like, all right, well, you want to go to the hospital? He's like, yeah, I think so. I'm like, okay, let's go to the hospital. Jump in, put him in the basket, send him up to the helicopter, and away we go. Easy breezy. Like, those are for me, those are the easy ones. But like, Stomp, for you could probably say that if you had to hike in for someplace, it'd be an hour hike in, an hour hike out with the victim. For me, I was jumping in the helicopter. It's 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out. So the bonus is about having a helicopter, but It doesn't always work like that. It's just sometimes it's nice. So
yeah.
You're in Boston Harbor. Okay. Start swimming.
A boat got crushed by a breaching humpback.
In Cape Cod. Start swimming. You'll be there tomorrow.
Trying to catch the tide.
Yeah, exactly. So, Quinny, for the listeners, so we got this Alaska Dangerous Territory. So this is a documentary about some of the challenges about the living in Alaska, and it covers a lot of different topics. But there's an 8 or 9 minute segment that actually highlights you, and I think this happened in 2002.
Yeah.
So this is crazy. So there's I don't know what kind of ship it is, but for the listeners, essentially there's a crew of, I don't know, about 10 people on the ship, and they start having some issues. I don't know if there's a fire or whatever.
Yes.
So the Coast Guard's called in. Quinny's one of the rescue swimmers, or the rescue swimmer. It was just you, right? You were the only rescue swimmer.
Correct.
And you guys get on scene, and there's an explosion after you arrive, right, on the ship?
So a little bit of both. So that is my biggest rescue I've ever done, and I was humbled when the History Channel called me and said, "Hey, we'd like to talk about this rescue with you." And I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." So that's where that clip you're talking about that came from, and that was years ago. But yeah, October 20th, 2002. You know what? Let me double check that and make sure. I think it was, October 20th, 2002. And we get launched out because there was a fire on the fishing vessel Galaxy. And what had happened is that they had some stuff in there. It was a 180-foot fishing vessel, and whatever was in a certain room or compartment down in the bottom of the ship had tipped over, and then when it ignited, but then it did a backdraft type explosion. So the door, so it fell over, created a spark. It ran out of air. They had a firelight or something like that up in the cabin. They go down to check it out, open the door, expose the air, backdraft, boom. Oh. And that's what happened to the ship. One guy got blown off immediately, and then from there, the whole ship just engulfed and flamed. So we get called saying there's been an explosion on the boat. Go out and get them. Well, it was a 2-hour flight for us to get out there. And while we're going out there, there are other Good Samaritan vessels that are coming into play. And you guys have probably seen it as well, where if you get called out and all of a sudden you've got somebody else on the trail or somebody else in the area that is coming to help, now all of a sudden you get people and agencies and boats that are coming to help. So that's what happened with that. Well, we get on scene, and the majority of the guys on the ship had abandoned ship. There were 6 people on the ship when we showed up. And when I tell you engulfed in flames, the whole ship, stern to bow, engulfed. And they were standing on fire.
So they're faced with the worst decision ever. Basically, either burn to death or you're going to get hypothermic in the ocean in about 2 minutes.
Yep. Because the water at the time in October is about 35 degrees-ish, give or take. So
that's like 30 seconds if you're lucky.
Yeah.
In the water.
Right. So everybody gets trained to do survival suits. So they put on these big, thick Gumby suits and whatnot. But some of the guys, because of the fire, they either got burned out or they couldn't get access to them. So 6 guys on the boat. The first guy, boom, he jumps off the boat as soon as we show up on scene. We're like, guy in the water. Like, all right, let the boat go pick him up. Let's worry about the guys that are standing on the frying pans. Now we're down to 5. 3 on the stern and 2 on the bow. So we try getting over the ship, and while we're over it, that's when the next explosion happened. And I tell it, it looked like a Roman candle. Like it came out of the roof and just big, bright, and burned. And I remember telling Melissa, Rivera, my pilot, I'm like, brake right. And she's like, you see the helicopter move and then move again away from the ship. And that was what that was all about. But that's when they were like, get in the water. Yeah, Jason, go get your gear on. You're going to go in the water and get them. And each one of them jumped off the ship to me one at a time. So, and
you're getting them in the basket and hoisting them, and they're hoisting them up.
Correct.
How long were you in the water? Was it you were there for a long time, right?
About an hour total. And I in and out of the water. That whole mission took about an hour. And then we were running out of fuel and had to go back. But we got all 5 people off the ship which was there are times like I get deep into that. If I go like high details, I'll start choking up. Still, it's crazy to me. But but we got all 5 guys into the aircraft, and then before we left scene, we called out to all the ships that were there, like, "Hey, does anybody need any help? Does anybody else need to go for medical attention?" They're like, "We're doing CPR on one guy right now," and we're like, "This is our last chance to get him." So we ended up hoisting him. He ended up passing away, and I don't want to make that a sad story, but he passed away of a core temperature of like 80 degrees, and this is 20 hours later. They continue to do CPR to try to bring his core temperature up, and it just never happened. But overall, 20 people out of 25 or 24 people were saved that day. So between us and the Good Samaritans. So
when you get on the scene, when the helicopter pilot gets on the scene and assesses that situation, is he or she immediately calling for a backup helicopter to say like, "Hey, you got to send somebody else out here just in case because we may need additional help," or is it only one? Is there only one option for one helicopter at that point?
That depends on the mission. In particular mission, we called the world. We got on scene and realized, holy cow, there are 20-something people in the water. Boat's still on fire. Like, there are people that are missing. So we ended up calling a second helicopter from Kodiak, Alaska. They launched directly about an hour after we did. Well, they have like 6 hours to get on scene. There was a National Guard helicopter and C-130 that launched out of... You know what? I might be mistaken with that. There was Air Force PJs. That's what it was. So the Herc came out of the Elmendorf Air Force Base out of Anchorage with PJs and stuff, and they were going out to assist with us. But by the time we were done, everybody else is arriving on scene by the time we're done and going back to shore. So they were going out for searching and helping with anybody else that needed it after. So,
and these conditions are insane. So you've got big waves, you've got cold weather, and then you're moving from one spot to another to get to the people that are in the water. And then you've got the big bulky equipment on, I'm assuming. So it's obviously exhausting for you. But how much distance can you realistically travel in those conditions? Are you swimming like 50 meters here, 50 meters there, or is it even more than that over time?
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know. It's tough to tell. You got to be is where you go.
How's it going in Finding Nemo? Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
Yeah.
We that was all. It was just catch the boat. And a lot of the guys that do this job, and this is why I enjoy doing the Real ResQ podcast, because it's listening to stories about what they do, and really you just don't have no idea how far you're swimming. You're just swimming until you catch what you're chasing, or you get them away from what they just jumped off of. So one of the things that we did on that in particular rescue is we did like a leapfrog. So once I got the first guy in the basket and we got him out of the water, I turned around and I start chasing after the boat. Well, the boat's like 100 to 150 meters away from me or yards away from me. I wasn't catching it. It's in 20-foot waves. It's a 180-foot boat drifting in 20-foot waves. I'm not catching that. And if I do catch it, I'm catching it one time. You don't want to get too close to that
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't want to exhaust myself. So I swam for about, I'll say 5 minutes. And for people that swim like an hour, they're like 5 minutes, that was it. Well, I had a lot more to do. So for me thinking, without burning fuel for the aircraft, without burning myself out, let me get the helicopter to help me. So I signaled ready for pickup, get me out of the water. I get up to the helicopter. I was like, I can't catch the boat fast enough. So just put me out and we'll leapfrog. I'll get a guy out, get me up, bring it over, put me back in. And that's what we ended up doing to save all 5 guys. And it worked brilliantly. So.
Wow! And then when you finally get up there, you've got a whole crew in the helicopter. What's the vibe? Everyone. I'm assuming some people are in shock, and other people are just trying to warm up, right? So I'm assuming it's a quiet mood in the helicopter when you get up there.
What I remember is a pretty, I would call it pretty quiet. I mean, obviously you're in a helicopter, rotor blades turning. It's not quiet. So it's not like you're having a conversation, but
yeah.
And at the time, the guys that were alive that we had picked out of the water, including the last guy that we picked out of the water, which was Captain Shoemaker. He was captain of the vessel. He was the last guy off the vessel, off the fishing vessel Galaxy. I still talk to him from time to time. Wonderful gentleman. Love him and his whole family. But I have their shipmate with me that I'm doing CPR on in the back of the helicopter as we're flying back to land. So that you can see the feeling in the aircraft of like they're very grateful to be alive, but they're upset that they're watching their friend is dead in front of them, and we're doing everything we can to try to bring him back to life. So it's that how do you explain that feeling? Like it's hard even as the rescuer to explain that. So.
Yeah. Well, you were awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for your actions that day. So, certainly, like if you guys had not been on the scene, that would have been even worse of a tragedy than it already was.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, it's an amazing video. So I'll include that in the show notes and on our social media, so that people can check it out. But it was really, really impressive. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Let me throw one more thing out there too. So again, Real ReqQ Podcast is the one I host, and I actually go into very, very detail with my wife. My wife asked me about it in episode 100, and then in episode 101, I have Captain Shoemaker, and he tells me like the prequel, what happened prior to us getting on scene. So it was between those two episodes. It was a wonderful recap of that in particular rescue. So.
I'll check those out. It's just your wife did the heavy lifting to get the real detail out of you.
She did. I got a bit choked up. Some of that too.
I bet. So, and we've talked about this before. And Stomp. This is always sort of higher on your list of curiosities when you talk to other people that have a background in search and rescue. But the aspect of sort of your mental wellness and how you can process things, and I think not necessarily you specifically, but like people that are on your team or just in general, how the Coast Guard handles that. Can you talk a little bit about, how the Coast Guard supports people with their mental health when they're dealing with traumatic situations like that?
Absolutely. And I highly recommend anybody that's in the job now, make sure you take care of yourself. The Coast Guard specifically runs a critical incident stress management debriefs after every big rescue. They offer it all the time because... And you guys could probably relate to some of this. It's like you don't know how Tom, Dick, and Harry are going to react, and if they're going to react the same way I am, or Stomp is, or you are, Mike. Like you don't know. So the Coast Guard offers it after every mission. Like, hey, is that okay? Did anything go wrong? You need to talk about it. If not, cool. If you do, let's make some phone calls. Let's get you back. For me, after that case, I had to talk about it multiple times because there was just multiple people that came to me and they're like, you doing okay? How'd it go? What happened? So you end up talking a lot about it. I didn't realize it affected me as much as it did until much later in life. But yeah, anybody that's in search and rescue, don't be afraid to talk. And I promise you can call me and tell me the story and what happened. And sometimes it's just nice to talk about things that go bad because there are people that don't understand and can't relate when all of a sudden you're having or seeing what we see. So call me.
Yeah.
No.
Do you feel like the military's gotten a lot better about encouraging people to be more open about these topics? Because I'd imagine like back in the days of World War. I mean I can just relate to my grandfather was a World War II veteran, and it was always just like don't talk about that. Just bury it down deep. And but it seems like it's changed quite a bit in the last probably 20, 30 years as far as the approach that the military takes.
I've seen it change immensely. Yeah. A lot of stuff, and I've actually heard of guys, and I can't speak from my own experience, but I've heard of special forces guys that actually, once they get back from a mission, they go somewhere to like actually decompress before they go home to their families. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I heard. As far as the Coast Guard goes specifically, yes, they have done so much to help those like people that do our job. Again, we don't see it's not always a happy ending. You don't see the great things all the time. There are some gnarly things you see. So, and there are some stories that have come on this podcast that I've had, guests that I've had on that are like, man, guys that sit there and they still, when you're like, okay, we're going to talk about this story, and they're like, okay, let's go. And you're like, wow, this still haunts you. This is still in you, like deep. So, yep.
Yeah. It is. We've talked to a few people that have talked about it before, and I think Stompy, obviously you deal with it quite a bit, but it's good to know that it's top of mind and that there's resources for everybody. But eventually, so you, just to sum up sort of your Coast Guard career, so you were 12 plus years, you did the 3 years in Alaska, you spent some time in California. It was essentially, was it the same job for the whole 12 years, just different environments? You were the rescue swimmer
we'll call
primarily?
It 10 years as a rescue swimmer. So I graduated.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. So prior to the honor guard stuff, so like 9 and change. But let's round numbers, 10 years as a rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard. And then I got out and went civilian side search and rescue and Gulf of Mexico. From there, it went to pretty much like around the world stuff with the company I was with. Myanmar, I stood duty in Myanmar. I did a rescue out of Saudi Arabia. It was cool. And then training, lots of rescue training, teaching people what I've learned and what I've done. So, which is more what I do now than anything else.
So you go into different agencies or even private organizations, and you would do training for them for various activities. So.
Correct. Yeah.
And then when did you come up with the dumb idea to do a podcast? Like every Thursday, I'm like, oh my God, I got to do this again. But I always have fun.
Right.
What was
ball and chain?
What made you think to say, I'm going to start a podcast? Were you that bored in COVID, or was it?
You know what? There was a little bit of that, when the majority of us started.
Right.
So one of the things that I've always enjoyed, and this is before I even came up with the idea of the podcast, was I've always enjoyed sitting down and listening to people's stories and learning from other guys that have done rescues. And it's actually a great help for those of us that are in search and rescue if you can sit down with somebody that does it. Because when you hear the stories, you're like, oh, I remember Stomp saying this. Why don't we not do that because of this? Stomp? Yeah. From time to time.
Oh, yeah.
So I love to hear the stories, and I love to get into the nitty gritty. I used to listen to people say, long story short, and I'm like, no. I want all the details.
Make it long.
Yeah, because it's like, that's where you get the most fascinating information and the stories that you would never hear about. So I enjoyed that for a while. And then I'm sitting around at work listening to other podcasts with one of my buddies. And he looked at me, he's like, man, you'd be a good podcast host. I'm like, whatever, you're out of your mind. A year of talking to my wife about it, my wife finally said, either do it or stop talking about it. And that's how it happened. So
did you?
God bless our wives. Didn't we say that at the beginning?
Yeah,
God bless our wives.
Yeah. Well, so my wife, I was like, I'm going to do a podcast. She's like, you can do a podcast? That's a dumb idea. I'm like, all right. That's great. Was the technical aspects of like setting up the show and all that, was that daunting for you, or are you pretty technical?
A little bit. It was one of those things, like once you start doing the research, I mean, probably like you guys, you got to just do the research. And
it was like one thing at a time. We would learn, like, okay, this is how we're going to upload it on Apple and the website and all that stuff. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Do the work. Like if you're interested in doing a podcast, do it. I mean, what's the worst that happens? Nobody listens? Okay. Well, then you got a great couple stories that are recorded and people that can keep their stories forever. So why not?
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah. And so your podcast, so the Real ReqQ Podcast, you basically connect with people that are in the sort of search and rescue world, and they'll just sit down and tell you the stories. It typically, like, how long are they? Like an hour and a half episodes?
I've had like 40 minutes to 3 hours. And
depending on who
it's one of those things, like, and you guys are welcome anytime, by the way. I just got to throw that out there because I love listening to the stories. But one of the things that I really like to do is guys that have had one rescue or 10 rescues. It depends on how much they want to talk about. But one of my favorite things that I like to do is I like to read like an award or a news clipping or an article, or you catch the TV clip and then you get the real story, like what really happened. You know, because everybody reads this little like clip on the news. Oh, guy rescued from, or what was the one we read earlier? The bear attack, right?
Yes.
Or the guy that was rescued that was taken down and ended up going to the hospital, right? So we have this little news clip. Great. Awesome. I want to know every detail. What's the real story? Cool. What did you get called out to? What was it like on scene? What was it like? What was the weather doing? Was it this? Was it that? Oh, my buddy did this. My buddy did that. And oh, this went bad, but this went right. This is the lesson I learned. That's what I love it. Oh, I'm getting all motivated right now. You guys want to start right now? Let's go.
well, we should tell you about the time Stomp sprayed himself with bear spray in the leg by mistake, and I almost had to rescue him.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And has that story ever been told? Probably not.
Oh yeah, we've told it multiple times. I bring it up frequently. Yeah,
I love it.
Stomp had bear spray and it exploded on his leg, and then he pretended like it was no big deal. And then we're halfway through the hike, and I look over, he's almost dead.
Oh, dude, it happened on mile 1. And basically, it was all over my pants. And then from there, I was like rubbing my face and
my God,
getting the sweat off my eyes. Yeah.
30-mile hike.
I hate it when that happens.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh gosh, that's great.
So you're on what? You got like 150, 160 episodes yourself?
So currently, I just actually released yesterday episode 191. Now there are over 200 because of like I do what's known as an asterisk episode, which is a little more like in detail. They're not totally like a rescue. It has to do with rescue, but some other aspect of it. So it's an asterisk episode. Get into a little more detail of something else. So, yeah.
All right. And now, what do you do to? You look like you still keep yourself in shape. So, you what do you do to stay in shape now? Do you still swim a lot? You a triathlon guy? You do CrossFit? What are you up to?
CrossFit is more my game right now. I enjoy that more than anything else. I used to lift, like just weight lift quite a bit. Then I realized that the cardio wasn't there anymore, so I had to mix. Yeah, right. So I had to do a mix of both. So I got into CrossFit with my wife, and we call it couples therapy. So we get to go to CrossFit together, do the same workout, but dip at our own level. So it's like actually we did one today. It was great. You know, like I was doing box jumps to a 24-inch box, and she was doing box step ups to a 20-inch box. So, but it was the same workout. It's the same clock, the same movements or similar, and that's what. But yes, that's what I enjoy. And I do it because I want to still be ready when the alarm goes off, and if that ever happens. So.
Yeah. And then for young people, we do get some young listeners. If they were thinking about like maybe they don't want to go the traditional route and party for 4 years in college, and they're thinking about military career. Do you talk to young people, or do you have any advice that you give people that are sort of trying to find themselves? Is the Coast Guard a good place to find yourself, or do you recommend that they look at other aspects of the military?
Man, I would look at all of it. Find what you want to do. One of the things that was nice about the Coast Guard for me is that we're in CONUS, which is in country for the most part. We do have the Coast Guard has some cutters or some larger vessels that go overseas and stuff, but you will find life in the job. Everybody's got to go to work, so why not have some fun with it? And if you're out in the ocean or you're in the Air Force and all of a sudden you're in a different area, you're learning a trade, it's not a bad way to go. For people that want to stay home and they want to get into some sort of search and rescue, you have your local law enforcement, you have your local fire departments, depending on where you live in the country. But there are agencies and stuff that do that. Get your paramedic, go get your EMT basic, that always helps. There are avenues out there to find. Ski patrol, I know we have ski patrol in New England. I know that for sure. So there are avenues to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and the northern states, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, all have volunteer search and rescue teams that you can join and qualify for.
Yep. And one of the cool things that I think about the volunteer search and rescue, which I was never a part of, because again, I've always been paid helicopter guy, but there's a lot of training that you can get through the volunteer search and rescue agencies. Like all of a sudden you're doing swift water rescue, covered because it's volunteer, but sponsors are like, hey, we're opening it up. Or ropes training, high rescue training. All of a sudden you're doing multiple pitch descents and ascents and pulley systems, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. And it's all through the volunteer. One person's teaching the next to keep keep it going. It's amazing. I love it. That's why I love what we do.
Yeah, it's great.
Nice. Well, Stomp, I've gone through all of my questions. I don't know if I missed anything that you wanted to cover here with Quinny.
Yeah, I have a couple things. Let's talk about
No, the answer is no. I'm just kidding. Sorry, Stomp.
Good answer, because I've got to go down a weird rabbit hole here.
Quinny's like, I want more dad jokes. Let's go.
Do I need to pour another whiskey? I just got to know that one.
Can you get a little more granular on the difference between a rescue swimmer and, say, a diver, like in terms of gear? I mean, you guys are just going out there without tanks, right? No oxygen. You're just swimming.
Correct. So we are, as a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, those guys, and we were staying on the surface of the water. We were not allowed to dive under vessels, and that was just it. So we didn't. That's why we didn't have the scuba tanks. Now there are agencies around the world that do that type of rescue training, including the SARTEX up in Canada, the Belgian Air Force. Those guys will jump out with tanks. They'll go under boats and do rescues that way, but that is not the U.S. Coast Guard. We're just surface swimmers.
Got it. And how do they keep track of you? Do you have strobes or GPS, or say for a night operation? Yeah.
So most of the time, if we're going out at night, we'll have chem lights. You guys, glow sticks. Yeah. Okay. So
Sure.
So we green. You'll have one on your mask, and I always had one in the back of my mask behind my helmet, and their job is just to keep visual eyes on us. Now, usually the pilots and the crew, they're flying with night vision goggles, so they'll be able to see. But for the most part, it's just keeping an eye on us. If they have to leave, we can come up on radio and talk to them, and we'll burn what's known as a Mark 124 day-night flare. So we'll burn the night end, which is a 20-second illumination flare, and it was super bright. I can't remember the lume, but it's really bright. So,
got it. And you had mentioned skipping over the long story short. So you did that to us early. You went, I'm just going to jump to high school. So give us the craziest thing you've ever done from, say, elementary school through junior high. What's the craziest thing you've ever done? You seem like the kind of guy that would be jumping off cliffs or jumping huge ramps on a Huffy. Tell us the craziest thing you've ever done.
Oh gosh. There's kind of a lot.
I figured.
You know what? I'll tell you what I got in trouble for. How's that one? So
all right.
So again, growing up in Ashburnham, Massachusetts, I loved growing up here. I had a blast. I had a wonderful childhood. We grew up on this small lake, and my parents had bought a cottage on this in particular side of the lake, and it had a steep drop off. Well, we knew that as kids. So there's this little tree, and I say little tree, it was probably 50 feet in the air, but we decided to scale the tree and jump off the branches, and which was only probably 20 feet into the water, but I got in trouble for that one for a while. And then all of a sudden my dad checked it out and it was okay, and then we made a rope swing. It was amazing.
Oh, there you go.
So the next one is when on the dam side of the lake, the way the winds would blow, it would blow from the north to the south, and the drifts would go over the dam and then create huge snow drifts in the back. So we would jump off the dam into the snowdrifts until they got jam-packed. And I got in trouble for that too when I brought my sister out. It's like, try this. And it was the next day and everything's solid ice. And we all got like banged up and hurt. And I got in trouble for that one too. Oh gosh, there's a lot.
Yeah, you should do an episode on just strictly that time of your life.
Stupid shit I did as a kid.
Stomp. I could fill up 4 episodes of my shenanigans, but I've never gone there when I was young. So
I'll tell you what, let me tell you one more, and then I'm going to ask the same question to you guys. One story, all right? Boy. So the last one is, again, growing up on a lake, we had a boat. So you guys remember Baywatch, where they'd be driving the boat and they dive off? Us, it was like wide open. Like max the throttle on this stuff and see if we could do it. And you'd end up skipping across the water. Got in trouble for that one too. You're going to break your neck. Don't do that, Jason.
That's too funny.
All right, your turn. Go ahead. Come on, Mike. One story. One story, Mike.
I mean, well, I always tell the story. Matter of fact, I was telling my kids this story. Is like I was such a little jerk when I was like, you do doorbell ditching and throwing eggs at houses and things like that. So we were out doing nonsense when we were younger. I grew up in North Reading. I apologize if the family that we did this to is listening, but we would ring in doorbells, throwing eggs. And then we were little pyros too. So we would one of my friends, his father was a police officer, so we had gunpowder and kerosene, and we would take those plastic Easter eggs and fill them up and like make a wick. And we're raising hell in the neighborhood, and the fathers are running around the neighborhood trying to find. So we're running away and we're thinking we're smart. So we go up to the local school and we've got these like miniature bombs. So we light the bombs, we light the eggs off, and we didn't realize that like it was going to light up the entire football field like daytime. So we light this bomb off, and just as we like light this bomb off, we see this giant shadow coming towards us, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill you." It was the guy that we had. One of my friends had thrown an egg at his house. He's like, "I'm gonna kill you." So we all run because we're all running away like maniacs. And eventually, he caught two of my friends. We're all hiding in the woods, and then the police show up, and the police are like, "We know you're in the woods. Come on out." And we eventually all had to come out, and it turned out that the guy that had caught us, he was on my paper delivery route. So I was so afraid to deliver papers. I would get up at 4 a.m. to deliver the paper to his house because I never wanted him to catch me. And then I never went to his house to collect money because I was afraid that he was going to kill me when he saw. Finally, his wife came knocking on our door like a year later, and she's like, "We haven't paid for a newspaper in a year." And she didn't know why. And so it was just stupid things like that.
Oh my
I was
God.
such an awful kid.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's a good story.
We called my neighborhood Looney Hill. So we were a bunch of maniacs. And
that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, for me in elementary school, we lived in this triple decker in Lynn, and there was this reclusive elderly man that lived next to us in a single family home. And he had this dilapidated garage. It wasn't for cars. It was just for like lawnmowers and things like that. But my friends and I decided to turn that into a fort. And we painted the entire inside of this guy's garage white. And then, of course, he discovered that we had painted the entire garage white. And that did not go over so well. Oh, my God. Yeah, that was a bad day. But,
Stomp,
stupid
don't
stuff
ask
you do.
Don't ask about these questions anymore. We're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, right. But I had an interesting one. I was at Lynn Woods. Actually, I was a bit older. And I dove into the reservoir at it's between Saugus and Lynn, and it was early spring, and it was about maybe 50 feet from a brick structure that was out in the water, like a pump station or something. You could get out to this pump station in Lynn, and then you could jump off. And I jumped off and hit the water. Immediately, my body froze. Like immediately, all my muscles froze up, and I couldn't even move. And I barely made it back to the shore where my friend was standing. But it's sort of apropos talking about all this, the swimming and the cold water and whatnot. But that was absolutely terrifying. I almost didn't make it back to the shore. It was such a short distance, but it hit me within seconds. My muscles just froze up.
Well, Quinny, that's what I wanted to ask is do they ever have you like jump in that freezing cold water so that you understand what the victims feel like, so that you know what? Because I'm assuming they're panicking. That's part of training for you?
It is part of training for us. But so when I got to Alaska, that was known as Dry Suit Appreciation Day. So you jump in and wait around. You're like, oh, this is why we wear a dry suit. You're shivering on the way out. You're like, yeah, I like a dry suit. That's great. Every year, at least once a year. Loved it.
Well, Quinny, again, so for the listeners, so the Real ResQ Podcast, I'll make sure that I include a bunch of I'll include the Dangerous Territories, the History Channel episode in the show notes. I'll link to your show. I'll link to your merchandise stuff. And there's some other stuff that we have here that so people can find you. We'll find episodes 100 and 101 so that if people want to do a deep dive on that particular rescue, they can do it. But we really appreciate you joining us, taking a chance on joining this sketchy podcast. You're probably thinking, like, what the hell did I get myself into?
No way. Love it. I love telling stories.
Yeah. Appreciate the Boston accent. That was great.
Yeah.
You can turn it on, turn it off.
My pleasure.
But again,
my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Quinny.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASRPodcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hill!
Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.